Hit the subscribe button and activate the bell icon for more videos like this. The police told me that I had just missed having my kids murdered by a serial killer. I recently got into a fist fight with my brother, causing me to miss my bus, only to find out the bus had been in a horrible accident. How has a few seconds changed your life? I have two, one about me and one about my father. Mine's is less climactic, so I should do that one first. Just got my license, was sitting at a stoplight that was completely blind, buildings on either side, no right on red because no one could see, was skipping a song and didn't notice the light had turned green. When I looked up and saw, I started to pull forward as an SUV comes barreling down at like 60 perpendicular to me and scraps my front end. If I had not been a music freak and just dealt with the song, I would have either been boned or in the side of the building. My dad used to work at One Liberty, which was right next to the World Trade Center. There was this awesome way the buildings connected like 30 stories up that my father always took to get to his building, by going through the World Trade Center instead of just taking the front door. Anyway, one morning I adamantly demanded my father to make me chocolate chip pancakes and refused to let him leave until he did. He was late to work. Guess the date. I was with my ex driving home late one night, and we were having a huge argument in the car. I stopped at a light, proceeded to yell at him. The light turned green, but I was in the middle of making my point, so I didn't immediately get going. Right as I was stepping on the gas, a drunk driver came from the other side, going about 90 miles per hour in insane zigzag, passing about 16 feet in front of my car. We both froze and looked at each other with a, "Holy hell, this is the luckiest argument we've ever had," look. When I was 4 years old, there were two men wanted for murder on the loose in the area. On the news they had been described as survival experts. One day Mom said she got a strange feeling like something bad was about to happen, so she took me and my sister to the park. When we got back, our house, it had been broken into and all that was gone was a little cash and all of our camping gear. So, it was a bright and sunny day in Colorado. A few siblings and I decided to ride our bikes around. We had brought flashlights and entered into a large concrete trench sewer thing. It was about 10 to 15 feet tall, but got smaller as we went further in. So me and my sister were scared. After about 15 minutes, we decided to turn around and go back after a little more pleading. As we return, the water level starts to rise from rain. We quicken our pace. So, right as we see the light of the entrance, our flashlight dies. We rush out and climb out of the trench. 30 seconds later, a huge wave of water comes torrenting down the trenches. We left our bikes along the side of the trench, and some lady let us stay in her house. Our parents later drove by, saw the flooded trenches, and assumed we were dead until they got a call from us apparently about 5 minutes later. My dad had a customer in New York that he worked for. You could never make this man mad. Ever. He would just shrug and say, "Well, we'll just have to work through this," and smile and get to work. One day Dad finally asked him, "John, you are the most easygoing person I've ever seen, why is that?" And he answered, "Dave, I was angry one day. I woke up late and rushed to get ready, and right as I got to the subway, the train pulled away right as I got to the station. There I sat cursing, having to wait for the next train. Already late to work and having a bad day, I walked into the ground floor of my office building, and that's when the elevator exploded as a terrorist flew a plane into it. My office was on the floor it hit. Since then, I'm on borrowed time. I was returning from my grandfather's funeral a couple years ago, and I was on the highway when a sudden downpour forced me to pull over because I couldn't see and I was hydroplaning. I pulled over to the shoulder of the freeway and put my car in park and lit up a cigarette to wait out the worst of it. For no reason that I can fathom, I suddenly had an odd feeling that I should pull my car ahead further, so I put it back in drive and pulled ahead about 20 yards and put it back in park. Mind you, this was the middle of the afternoon and I was on a long, very straight stretch of the freeway, so really any place to pull over was just as good as any other. Not 2 minutes after I pulled ahead, I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw alternating headlights and taillights headed right in my direction at a very high rate of speed. Two women had lost control and their car was doing 360s as it went off the road just feet behind where I was sitting. There was an open field next to us, so they just skidded to a stop and everyone was fine. But if I hadn't pulled forward, they would have surely collided with me and things would have turned out much differently. I chalked that one up to Grandpa saving my butt. Towards the end of college, I went on a date with a girl who wanted to go to a club in town. I never wanted to go to this club, but since she really wanted to go, I begrudgingly agreed. When we arrived, I went to get her a drink. While at the bar, This little number walks right up to me, and starts asking where I'm from and telling me how I look familiar. I entertain her a little and answer her questions, but I'm on a date and I'm a cynic and believe that this was just some girl who wanted free drinks. I tell her goodbye and go find my date. Fast forward about 10 months, and my girlfriend, not the same girl from my date, breaks up with me, and a friend of mine starts pestering me to come to meet him at a bar so he can introduce me to his new lady. I show up, meet this girl, have a couple vodka tonics and go to leave. It turns out it's an open mic and my buddy starts telling me I need to go up and jam. I keep saying no, but after about 2 minutes of pestering I say okay, but just one song. I play the song, get off stage, go to say goodbye, and just then my buddy's girlfriend tells me that one of her friends just showed up and there is some guy who keeps hanging around her and won't leave her alone, so I need to pretend to be her boyfriend. Turns out this girl was the girl who came up to me in the bar months previously. We end up talking, then dating and ultimately got married. I am typing this from the hospital where 24 hours ago, my wife gave birth to our third child. I parked my car in front of my dad's van on the street parking so no one would see me if they were driving past. There were a few cars, maybe one every 20 minutes, so I should be fine, I told myself. I positioned the camera phone on the wipers of the car and stood on the street. Grainy and dark. A terrible photo. A car approaches. I wait, let it pass. Another photo taken, just as bad. I turned on my car's headlights, and retook another photo. Eerily illuminated. That'll do. Maybe another one? I decided against another one. I'm not trying to be vain here. I turned off the lights of the car, and walked up the driveway, which maybe took less than a minute. Walk into the house, shut the door and smash. Boom. The sound was so sudden, I thought it was the bass of a stereo in the basement. Maybe someone was up this late watching a movie? I turn around and face the door, looking to see. No car. Where's my car? Even more, where's my dad's car? Something catches my eye to the right. My dad's car is flipped on our front yard. A random car is on its side leaning against my car, which is shoved right over where I had been posing. To this day, my parents refuse to have anyone in our family to park on the street parking. Was having a smoke while waiting for the bus to take me to high school. My friends pulled up and asked if I needed a ride. I wanted to finish my smoke and was chatting with a hot girl across the street, so I passed. Less than 50 feet from my stop he skidded on black ice and smashed into a tree. I probably wouldn't have time to put a seatbelt on. Smoking might have saved my life. When I was 17, I got invited to a party by a coworker that was affiliated with a local gang. At the time, my town was going through a hell of a year of inter-gang violence. So much so that they set up injunctions in the hot areas of town to try and crack down on all this. Anyways, that night I ended up getting pulled over on the way to the party. The police officer kept me for roughly 15 minutes, doing his routine stuff. Meanwhile, the party that I was headed to ended up getting mobbed by a rival gang at almost that precise time. 6 people were stabbed, 1 guy died, and several people were seriously injured due to the fight. Had I not gotten pulled over, I'd have been right in the thick of it. Needless to say, best riding without a seatbelt ticket I've ever gotten. I was a few seconds away from buying a plane ticket for flight 3407 from Newark to Buffalo. Luckily a friend came into my room and convinced me to stay home that weekend. Checked online later that night and saw the plane had crashed and there were no survivors. Guess I got lucky this time. I was at a friend's house and we were just about to head out the door, but he couldn't find his keys. As he was looking, we heard several loud bangs and then the fire alarm started going off. He finally found his keys and poked his head out the door. He told me to walk quickly to the stairs and not look back. Turns out a guy was shot in the hallway about 5 feet from his door. Long time ago, my 9-year-old son woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I was a single mother of 4 kids, 13 to 1 in age. As my son walked to the bathroom, he had a view into my 13-year-old daughter's room. There was a naked man with a scarf across his face kneeling by her bed. My son got so scared he started to run to my room to wake me, but before he could, the naked guy walked behind him, patted him on the shoulder, and went right back out the slider he had broken into. We called the police and they got there in what felt like a minute. Through the interviews and a review of what my son viewed, they told me that I had just missed having everyone murdered by a serial killer. They said he was doing a ritual next to my daughter's bed and that my son had interrupted him. They believed that he would never finish the murders if he had not done his ritual. They did think he might come back. My home was watched for weeks. I was never alone in that house if I could help it and moved soon after. So if my son had not gotten up to pee, my children and myself would all be dead. Still afraid to sleep over 20 years later. Several weekends ago on a mildly busy Northern Virginia highway I chose to stay in the middle lane for a little longer than usual before my exit. A few seconds after choosing to not change lanes, the right lane came to a sudden halt due to a stalled car ahead. A big pickup truck hauling a heavy trailer slammed into the car that would have been in front of me, would have been me, and it literally exploded, debris and glass shooting in all directions as the truck slammed into it. I was so stunned that I didn't react to what was happening literally right next to me. The collision caused a chain reaction where an SUV in that lane ramped up onto a smaller car and literally rolled over, into the lane I was in at the time right behind me. Had I braked or otherwise slowed, because of what I was seeing next to me, that SUV would have rolled over in front of, or onto, me while I was traveling at 60 miles per hour. I passed by totally unscathed, seconds from two different terrible collisions. Survivor of a plane hijacking here. 12 years ago, before 9/11, I was on a flight from London to Nairobi, Kenya. As we were flying over the Sudan desert, we hit what seemed like some really bad turbulence. The only issue was that it was sunny outside, with no sign of clouds or rain. The turbulence kept up for 5 to 10 minutes, and all of the passengers were starting to get a little worried. Suddenly, there was a calm. Then our plane dives. I'm talking a Boeing 747 heading straight for the ground. We all knew it was the end. I watched as drops of water from the cup in front of me lifted into the air and attached to the ceiling, and watched as my gas mask fell in front of me. Right before I knew there would be impact, the plane miraculously came out of the nosedive. Several long minutes later, the pilot came on over the loudspeaker, announcing that everything was under control and that we would be continuing on to our destination. As we learned when we landed, apparently a mentally unstable man had stormed the unlocked cockpit and had attempted to crash the plane, under the belief that we were all out to get him. Thankfully, the co-pilot used to be in the Air Force and had training in pulling planes out of nosedives. As we watched our story unfold on CNN, we learned that we had been 3 seconds from exploding in midair from the sudden change in atmospheric pressure. So yeah, 3 seconds from death. Me and my family were on a vacation to London in 2005. On early Thursday morning, we awoke ready to get sightseeing. However, as we were about to head to the subway station, my mom decided that she needed to do laundry, so we detoured to McDonald's instead, while she went to the laundromat. Sitting in McDonald's eating a breakfast sandwich, I noticed that there seemed to be an awful lot of police cars and ambulances going by. Television comes on, and lo and behold, multiple bombs have been detonated on subway lines. One of them being the exact line that we would have been on at the time, if not for a large bag of dirty laundry. When I was in high school, we were at a party out at a cabin in the country. The group of people I was with were all going to stay out there, but my girlfriend got violently sick at the end of the night, so we ended up leaving instead. That night a guy got mad because he wanted to hook up with a girl who was with her boyfriend. The guy was drunk. Well, when everyone was sleeping, this butthole grabbed logs out of the fire. The cabin had an interior fireplace in the center of the room, kinda like a ski lodge does, and threw the burning logs onto the couch and left. Everyone that was there was sleeping, and we were all drinking heavily that night. I lost 2 good friends that night, and some others were burnt and disfigured for life. It was definitely the worst thing that happened in high school. I was in Iraq and we would get hit ever so often with mortars. Imagine that, right? I go to take a shower at about 4 a.m. I worked the night shift, so I just got off of mission. I was walking towards the shower area and I realized I forgot my towel, so I turned back to get it from my room. About 30 seconds of getting into my room, I heard a pretty loud whistle and knew what it was. I ducked near my cot and hoped for the best. After a few moments, I walked out of my room to see the shower area leveled. I just kind of stood there in awe for about 15 minutes, blinking and probably mouth breathing. When I was 16, I worked cleaning up at my uncle's woodshop and spent a lot of time letting my mind float off during tedious labor. Needless to say, I wasn't allowed to operate any machinery larger than a shovel. There was, however, a bedroom-sized dust collector that sucked microscopic wood dust out of the air, so fine that it behaves much like a gas in the air and like a liquid when in its containers. My 16-year-old brain became very curious one day regarding how this strange dust would react to an open flame. I couldn't really imagine how it could burn if it was so fine and thin and behaved like air. I open the collector, dust floats out and up to the lights. I pull out a butane lighter from my pocket and hold it into the impenetrable cloud and My uncle calls me for lunch because sandwiches arrived. After that I forgot about it. I only find out years later what would have happened if I lit that flame. When I finally understood the significance of this, I was in 4th year university and thanking the great Athasma for not letting my 16-year-old self kill my dumb butt. This one isn't life or death or anything, but I was in a bad relationship in college, and one of my friends called me from home, to ask me if I wanted to go on a road trip with him. Originally I told him no, but as he was leaving, my girlfriend called me and we broke up. It was a bad relationship but I was still hurt and wanted to have some fun, so I agreed to go with him last second to forget everything and just have fun. Barely made it before he left. On that trip I met a girl. 2.5 years later I am now marrying this girl in a month and never have been happier. Thanks for listening to. Hit the subscribe button and activate the bell icon for more videos like this. Let us know in the comments what you think about these stories.